Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the 100% accurate, most likely playoff prediction based off of where we're at right now. There's going to be things that potentially change when it comes to the auto bids based on who wins with the conference championships, but this is where we're at. This is the true energy we have with these 12 teams, and this is a very, I think, very good prediction when it comes to where we are right now and where these teams potentially will be ranked. Now, when it comes to number 12, I'm going to go with Arizona State. So this scenario would be Arizona State beating Iowa State. Iowa State can still make the playoff. They have to beat Arizona State. If they lose, they are obviously done. If Arizona State loses, they are done. It is a do or die game there when it comes to the Big 12 Conference Championship. And I do think Arizona State, they're 2.5-point favorites. They've been winning recently. There's a lot of energy. I've got them winning. Now, the thing with Arizona State is some people think they should be ranked higher than number 12 just because of their resume and the fact that they have 2 losses and they'd get another quality win over Iowa State. However, if you move Arizona State up, let's say, because right now I think there's one true bubble team, and I'm going to get to it, but if Alabama makes it as the one bubble team, do you really want to punish the 5 seed by making them play Alabama in round 1? I don't think so. So I think they would go Arizona State at number 12, or you could also, and I've seen people also do this, the final bubble team, maybe Miami, or maybe Ole Miss, maybe South Carolina. But right now, I do think it is going to be Alabama. And so in this ranking, I am going with Arizona State at number 12, Alabama at number 11. I understand a lot of people are saying Alabama, they're 3 losses. There's no way they should make it. The only reason they're getting in is because of the fact that they're Alabama. There is no rule against a 3-loss team making the playoff. You compare Alabama to Ole Miss. You compare Alabama to South Carolina. They've got the head-to-head over South Carolina, and they've got a better resume than those teams, and they've got a better strength of record. They've got a better just strength of schedule, body of work, and so I think Alabama will be picked over those 2 teams. Now, what Alabama cannot have happen is SMU losing, because now you're talking about a 2-loss SMU team, one of those losses coming in their conference championship, possibly nudging out Alabama and making there be basically 0 bubble spots, although I guess that'd be a bubble spot. But if SMU wins, the ACC only gets 1 team in because Clemson is bye-bye. But listen, I think Alabama out of the 3-loss SEC teams would be the team that would be picked. You could also maybe argue Miami. We'll talk about Miami here in a bit. But I'm going with Alabama at number 11 right now when it comes to that. Moving on to number 10, it is Indiana. So Indiana was the last team I filled out. I had all the other spots done, and Indiana, I just put them at number 10 because that's where I think they're going to go. They are 11-1. They've had ridiculously impressive, margins in terms of their victories. This schedule is terrible, though. And with Indiana, you've got the loss to Ohio State. It was not a good performance. They got outgained significantly. Ohio State controlled the entire second half. Indiana kind of turtled up. You could say, well, Ohio State has 2 losses. Indiana has 1. Indiana beat Michigan. Ohio State lost to Michigan. But Ohio State has 2 better wins, including beating Indiana by a lot. And also, Ohio State has a way better strength of schedule. They've got a better strength of record. They've got a better FPI. And also, when it comes to Indiana, I know their fans say, well, it's not our fault. The schedule has not been good. But it kind of is when you look at the non-conference and you face an FCS team and you back out of the game against Louisville. You're scared of Louisville, really? Come on. It's not good. It's not good for the sport. And I like Indiana. I'm a big fan. They're a cute team. They are. They're a good team, but they can't. They're not going to be in front of Ohio State. When you face a big daddy like Ohio State, it's very hard to beat a team. We saw the result, and I just can't see Indiana being ranked higher than Ohio State in terms of that. So I've got Indiana at number 10, Tennessee at number 9. So it seems like right now everyone is saying the 8v9 game is going to be Ohio State versus Tennessee. And if it is that, I think if you just compare Ohio State and Tennessee, Ohio State has a better resume than Tennessee. They both have a bad loss. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. Ohio State lost to Michigan. But data suggests Michigan is actually a good team and they're better than Arkansas, okay? Okay, I'm serious. And so when you look at Ohio State and you look at their quality wins, all of the numbers, all of the metrics, all of the experts have come out and said Ohio State will be hosting this game against Tennessee. And maybe Ohio State moves up to like a 7 at best case scenario, depending on what happens. But I think Ohio State's an 8 right now facing Tennessee at home. That would be my prediction. I think Ohio State and Tennessee are right there, 8-9. There could be a scenario where Ohio State moves up to 7 and maybe Tennessee moves up to 8. And maybe Indiana moves up to 9, so then it's Tennessee versus Indiana. I've seen that potential matchup in Knoxville. But right now I have Ohio State taking on Tennessee in the 8v9 game with the Buckeyes. If you look at the resume, both the teams are 10-10, or excuse me, both teams are 10-2. And the Buckeyes, they're just, they're going to get a little bit of a good treatment there. We know this. This is Ohio State. Let's be honest, guys. Come on. Ohio State, they're going to be ranked in front of Tennessee. If they're both 10-2, Ohio State, they've got a better resume, the history and everything. They're going to be in front of Tennessee. Moving on to number 7, it's Georgia. So this would be Georgia with 3 losses. And the question is, and the committee has said, they're not going to punish teams for losing the conference championship. So with 3 losses, Georgia's in front of a 1-loss team. 2-loss teams, Tennessee and Ohio State. Because that 1 loss in the conference, if this scenario plays out, it would be Georgia losing to Texas. Georgia's already got the quality wins. They probably should have lost to Georgia Tech. It would have been a lot more fun if they lost to Georgia Tech, just because they would be way down. And if they lose, I mean, they'd be done because they'd have 4 losses. But they're going to be in, win or lose. If they win, they're going to get a bye. If they lose, they're probably going to be, I think, the 7 seed or the 6 seed, you could argue. But they have 3 losses if they lose. So I'd put them at the 7 seed. They'd be hosting Indiana. I'm sure they would love that. But yeah, so I'd put Georgia at the 7 if they lose, even with 3 losses. At number 6, it's Notre Dame. Notre Dame's 11-1. They only have 1 loss. Honestly, I wonder what the comparison to Indiana would be for Notre Dame, honestly, when you think about it. I think Notre Dame does have like a more quality schedule altogether. Although I don't know, because Indiana has a road game at Ohio State. That's way harder than anything Notre Dame faced, and Notre Dame has a much worse loss than Indiana. It's just interesting to see Notre Dame and Indiana that far apart. I'm not sure that should be. Maybe Notre Dame should be a little bit lower. I mean, I know they're 11-1. The metrics love Notre Dame because they've been blowing everyone out. Like, the metrics like Notre Dame more than Indiana. And I don't know. I mean, they have that horrible loss. It was early in the season. They've been playing better. They do have, they face some teams that are decent. I mean, USC they've kind of given up, but they're an okay team. They beat them. They beat Georgia Tech. We saw how Georgia Tech played against Georgia, and they easily beat them. They beat Army pretty easily. Army's a solid team. They only have 1 loss. So I mean, I could see, Notre Dame. I think they'll be ranked higher than Indiana. I do. So I've got them at number 6 facing Alabama. That would be a bad draw for Notre Dame. At number 5, it's Penn State. So another situation where the conference championship comes into play with Penn State. And in this scenario, they lose a close game to Oregon and they get the 5 seed. They have 2 losses, but I mean, you're looking, I don't think they'd be below Notre Dame, because Penn State's another team that really struggles to, I mean, they just don't have many good wins. But if they do make the Big Ten championship, that's good, and you finish 11-2. I think they're going to be the 5 seed. I mean, you could make an argument that maybe Ohio State should jump them because Ohio State beat them on the road. But do you really want to punish Penn State for playing in their conference championship game if they lose? I mean, if they get blown out, then maybe. But if it's relatively close, I mean, they're only 3.5-point underdogs. I think Penn State ends up as the number 5 seed, honestly. The number 4 seed, Boise State. Very simple. Boise State wins. I think they're going to get a bye. I think they're going to be the 4 seed overall. If they lose, they're done. You're facing UNLV at home. You're the favorite in the Mountain West Championship. The number 3 seed is SMU. SMU, it's a little bit more complicated than Boise State. If they win, they're in as the 3 seed because they'd be 12-1. If they lose, they're on the bubble. And they're probably getting in at 11-2, but they'd be on the bubble, arguing their case against an Alabama, arguing their case against a South Carolina, arguing their case against a Miami. And so that's the story for SMU. They face Clemson. If Clemson beats SMU, they're going to be in with a bye very likely. If SMU loses, they're going to be on the bubble. If they win, they're in. Clemson's gone. Number 2 seed would be Texas. Very simple. Texas beats Georgia in the rematch. They're going to be the number 2 overall seed, or possibly the 1 seed if Oregon loses. But in this scenario, Oregon is going to be the 1 seed, obviously. But if Texas loses, most people expect them to be the number 5 seed if they lose to Georgia. And then the number 1 seed, it is Oregon. Oregon wins this game. They finish 13-0. They're the only undefeated team in college football right now. If they lose, they will be the 5 seed. If Oregon loses and Texas loses, Oregon will be the 5. Texas will be the 6. Penn State would be the number 1 overall seed in that scenario. Georgia will be the number 2 overall seed. in that scenario. So that's the current situation, guys. I tried to balance it. You've got Penn State, Big Ten team taking on a pack or a Big 12 team in Arizona State. You've got Notre Dame, an independent, taking on Alabama, SEC team. You've got Georgia, an SEC team, taking on Indiana, a Big Ten team. You've got Ohio State, Big Ten team, taking on Tennessee, SEC team. And then you've got your top four of the Group of Five champion, the Big 12 champion, or the ACC champion, the SEC champion, and then the Big Ten champion rounding it out. And then when it comes to the bubble, the teams missing, Miami, they're going to have an argument, but it's tough. They have 2 losses. They didn't make their conference championship. And I mean, they would need SMU to win to get Clemson out. Because the thing is with Miami is they would be blocked by SMU if SMU loses, because SMU would not be below Miami if they lost. But if SMU wins, then Clemson gets bounced out completely and SMU stays in. So we'll see what happens with Miami. There's going to be an argument for them. I've seen some people put Miami in, and the problem is they've got 2 losses in a weak conference. It's just tough, and they're not good losses either. Especially, I mean, you just lost to Syracuse. You allow all those points. The few wins that they had middle of the season, very, very close games against not great opponents. Remember with the Friday night game against Virginia Tech. Ole Miss, Ole Miss is going to make an argument as a 3-loss team. They crushed South Carolina that middle of the season. They did lose to Florida recently, which gave them their 3rd loss. I think it's going to be pretty tough for Ole Miss to make it. South Carolina, their argument is we're playing the best right now out of anyone, but I think the committee values head-to-head, and that's going to be a problem for South Carolina against Ole Miss and Bama. And also their resume, their strength of record, their analytics are just not as good. They're just not. UNLV, if they win, they're in. If they lose, they're done. If they beat Boise State, they're going to be in, because people say, what about Army? Even if Army beats Tulane, and I think I do have Army on there. If Army beats Tulane, they're just not ranked. They're not going to be ranked as high as UNLV. Because UNLV, if they beat Boise State, that's a way better win than beating Tulane. Because Boise State, they're like a top 12 team right now, according to the committee, and UNLV's going on the road. So UNLV's in a spot where if they win, they're in as the Group of 5 team. They would be the number 12 overall seed by default, I think, because they're so ranked so much lower. Army is, I think, done no matter what. They're just not going to make it. If they had a competitive game against Notre Dame, it might be a different story. Clemson at number 18. Clemson, if they win, they're in. And they steal a spot from someone, because then SMU probably makes it, but they get bounced out of being an auto bid. But Clemson needs the auto bid. If they lose, they're done. With the loss to South Carolina. And then Iowa State, the final team on this list. So Iowa State, if they win, they're in. If they lose, they're done. Very similar to Clemson, very similar to UNLV. So I would say right now the true bubble teams are Ole Miss, South Carolina, Miami, and also Alabama. Those are the bubble teams right now. And obviously, Arizona State, if they lose to Iowa State, they're going to be bounced. Iowa State's going to be in. Very simple. The teams that have already clinched their spots, I would say right now, Indiana, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, Oregon. Yeah, those are the teams that are in. And then obviously, there's going to be an ACC champ that gets in, whether it's Clemson or SMU. And then if UNLV beats Boise State, UNLV probably goes to the 12, and then Arizona State would go to the 4 if that happened. Or the winner of Arizona State, Iowa State. That would be my guess. So guys, that's just a little food for thought on, where we're looking right now in terms of this projected field. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.